All right. Do you want to go ahead and kick us back off, Saskia? We are having everybody return now. We're at 10:50, so we all took a 10-minute break.
Yes, 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 yes. So, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully, you're now making your way back. If we did step away for a little while, thank you so much. So now we're going to resume the agenda with the wonderful Jacqueline Zoccoli. Jacqueline is going to be covering building empathy into who you are. And this is going to be a presentation you really want to dial into because empathy is key for emotional intelligence building. So Jackie, step onto the stage and let's just hear that wonderful presentation of yours.
I apologize for the delay. However, that kind of fits into what my conversation is going to be today. All of us, if we look at the challenges that are happening in our world today, the mental challenges, I can say that a lot of them can be combated by me. M-my-E, emotion. If it were that simple, how wonderful it would be. However, it really is that simple. I don't need to go through all the ins and outs, literally, of what's been going on since 2020. However, let me just emphasize a few things that have made our mental health as bad as it is today. When you get an entire population of people worldwide who are isolated and their main forte is to be sociable, that's the start. The second is when they don't really have any control over being social. That's the next thing. And by the way, I asked to be spending more time with my family. And guess what? We got more time with your family. Now what? And the other is, what's the future? What's the future going to be? I have no clue. We've never been here before. So you can see these steps are building. They are building into what we're calling as the mental health issues that we have. And the last, which was so obvious to me, I'm part of the Queen Creek Chamber of Commerce here in Arizona. And what we talked about with the education committee was that parents hear their children who were in, home all this time say to their parents, Mom, Dad, what am I supposed to do for a career? And the parents are like, no clue, because we don't know what's happening. And then when we did get information about what's happening, guess what? They were contradictory. So trust was in that whole formula. Well, I'm not going to spend my entire talk on the doom and the gloom because you all know that answer. That's obvious. However, I have found that there are ways for us to change that, to really change that. You see, what we had was the people who were the survivors, and we're going to make it through and thrive. Or we had the people who were the complacent ones. Those were the two places that we had people residing in. The complacent ones, although complacency sounds like an easy word, that means you do nothing. You don't go forward. You don't go backwards. You're on hold. Well, if you have a population that's on hold, hopefully those that are going to survive and thrive are going to help them, going to assist them. And then I began to look at the word complacency. It's not just on hold. I began to look at the word complacency associated with love. I know, it's weird, huh? The opposite in my world of love is hate. No, it's not hate. The opposite of love is complacency. Complacency is accepting things just as they are without being grateful for what you have. There's no gratitude in complacency, it's accepting. And I love the quote, gifts from God are extended based on my acknowledgement of them. Gifts from God are extended based on my acknowledgement of them. So we can't play into complacency very long before the mental health issues begin to grow. So we know they're one of two camps. Okay, that's fine. Now what do I do? Well, what I do now at this point is I realize that there are two words that are messing us up because we use them interchangeably instead of focusing on one instead of the other. And those two words are empathy and sympathy. Sympathy. Simple words, we use them all the time. Sympathy, empathy. Okay, we use them all the time. What really is the difference between sympathy and empathy? Well, I did a little study on all of this, and sympathy is when you're giving pity. You're making judgment. You're bringing in your own life and giving advice. You're feeling sorry for someone. Oh, okay. There are times when you need to do that. Like if someone has lost someone near and dear to them, and you don't really know them very well, you give them sympathy. Oh, I'm sorry to hear about what's happened. Oh, it's really awful. And you mean it sincerely. You mean it. And there are ways around saying the sympathy card, and I'll give you an example because I will use it the rest of my life. Recently, when my grandson passed away at age 19, during the celebration of his life, the pastor said, "It's often hard not to give sympathy." He said, "I want you to remember the 3 H's. The first H is hush. The second H is to hear. Hear what they have to say. And the third H is to hug." And those 3 pretty much cover helping them in their grief. However, his last comment resounded with me even more. And that comment was, "With all of the unanswered questions, may you still find peace." With all your unanswered questions, may you still find peace. So that really is part of the difference between sympathy and empathy. So how is empathy different? Define it yourself. However, I would define it as listening. Listening, no judgment. Absolutely no judgment at all. Not giving advice. Intentionally listening. Intentionally listening. That's really important. So I looked at what was called the mental healthy first aid. And I don't know if I can do this, share the screen. It sure would be nice if I had a chance to do that. And if I get really, really lucky, and I think I will, I have these up on the screen, so it's going to be easier for you to see. Can you see this? Colleen, raise your hand.
You're sharing your screen, but we only see the Zoom screen. So I'm not sure if you're sharing the right
Okay.
screen. You need to share your main screen, Jackie, and then we should be able to see whatever you move around to. Just click and share the main screen and
Got
then
it?
we'll be able to,
Is that it?
yes, we can
Okay.
see these slides.
So what you're seeing is the 2 definitions, sympathy and empathy. And when I looked at a source called Mental Health First Aid, I think personally, I would take a screenshot of this if you could. It's a little key at the top of the keyboard, because this is very, very critical as far as I'm concerned. These are the behaviors that create empathy, and they all start with listening. Listening without judgment. That's the key here. Listening with intention. That means completely there. Eye contact, no fidgeting, no texting, complete intention. And then without advice. You're not telling them what to do. And this is what happens in so many cases of suicide and everything else. Oh, this is what you have to do. No, it has to come from them. Don't take away their privilege of figuring it out themselves. Listen with understanding. So you may say what I call an active listening. You said this, 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 and this. Don't throw any whistles and chimes. Active listen to them with understanding. And the last of what happens when you do that, not only do you have a better connection with them, but you get what I call your vulnerability and your intimacy. Into me, see. If we had used this whole example of empathy in the way we respond to people, think of how different it would be. Think of how different life would be instead of pouring advice, instead of giving pity. Think of how different it would be. So I began to look at my life and I said, am I using empathy? Well, I know the best example of this. And that example is with my mentor, Patricia J. Munson, in about 1986, she started a group called Women in Discovery. And on weekends, she would take up to thousands of women and be able to get them through a formula to build their lives. She changed thousands of lives. And as I look at what she gave me, I realized that even though all of what she said was based on integrity, it also was a way to deliver empathy. So I would like you to also consider using your screenshot to be able to look at these as well. Because my task here is to be able to help you build empathy into what you're doing every day. The first one is a little hard to stomach. What it is you are 100% responsible for you. I found that affrontive. That car ran into me and wasn't my fault. Well, how you responded was your fault. You are able. You are able to respond to that situation. The second is to go to solution. So many times there are people that are blamed for this, that, and the other, and maybe one of them's you. But as quickly as possible, go to solution. It solves a lot of things, wastes a lot of time, saves a lot of time. Ask permission before changing everything. I can't tell you how many times I did this with Patricia. We'd go to lunch. We're scheduled to go to lunch. The last minute, somebody calls and says, I haven't seen you for a long time. Why don't we go to lunch? I said, hey, I'm going with Patricia this afternoon. Why don't you join us? The three of us show up. Patricia's looking at me like, we said you and I were going to sit for lunch. Although I love so-and-so, you never asked my permission. So although you assume it's okay, which is the next one, ask permission, make no assumptions. It makes a ASS out of, you know how that goes. Make no assumptions. The next one is what others think of me is none of my business. So many times we are well, what are they going to think about me? Well, that's not fair. They're thinking, it's none of my business what you're thinking. Really, what you think about me is none of my business. Of course, I'd like it to be positive. Of course, I'd like to affect your life in a positive way. Of course, all of those things, but it's really none of my business. Presume positive intent. So when people are doing things with you or what you appear to be at you, most people don't wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to mess somebody's life up. Presume positive intent. What was it behind that was really throwing that at me? Did they really mean it in a positive way? Strategy. And I love this strategy and I do it all the time. Something happens in my world. There's a challenge. And with that challenge, I have to make a decision. So the first thing I do is it my responsibility to change that? Can I change it? How? And if you can, do it. But if not, watch. And I love the expression, I wonder what God's going to do with this next. And the last one, and I'm going to throw in one more because so many of us are working so desperately to do what people want us to do by saying yes to everything instead of saying no. I forgot to put that in. No is a complete sentence. And if you say it, no, this doesn't work for me, it feels so much better. Or no, this doesn't work for me now. Both of those are a lot easier way of saying no, because you were the one, your reality is all that counts, really. And the last one is something that I pattern my entire life with all the time. And I use it in business all the time. And it's the 4 R's. The 4 R's. Let's give an example of the 4 R's. You are working in a corporation or some company, and you are responsible in your department for the coffee. So you go to a staff meeting, and the speaker says, or your boss says, somebody left the coffee on and it's crispy crittered. We're going to have to get a new pot. You leave the meeting and you get back to your desk and you go, I resent that. I didn't do it. So you begin to resent. Next thing happens. Oh, could you possibly stay overtime and over this weekend? Not in your life. I'm going to resist that. Then the next thing that happens is, I'm going to work on revenge. This is ridiculous. And by that time, your boss is already at resentment, resistance, and about ready to get into revenge. This is how nations explode. This is how relationships explode. This is how marriages explode. And they need not happen because there is a way to stop it. As soon as there was the first resentment, you stop what you're doing. You go back to the individual and you report with love. You know, I felt like you were trying to tell the world that I did it, or I had feelings of not being adequate. So it's I messages. It's I messages. So as I looked, excuse me, as I looked at this and I thought, well, okay, Patricia has helped me a lot through all of this. And I began to say, well, have I really done this all my life? And what I came up with, yes, I have done this all my life. And how this really shaped me. When I was 6, my father died, and my mother, widowed mother, did not pass judgment on things that were happening. She listened to me. She gave me choices and chances to make my own mistakes. When I joined the Peace Corps in Liberia and West Africa, I had to have empathy. I had to. I had no choice. I wasn't going to give them advice. I wasn't going to tell them how to live. I wasn't going to tell them that you need a refrigerator. Now they want a refrigerator and they can't have one. Empathy was I was listening and understanding. And then I began networking groups after I started my first business in the Bay Area in California based on expertise and needs. And guess what? I had to listen. I wasn't there to give advice. I had to find out their expertise and needs so I could give them choices so that they could actually put that on their path, whoever on their path. And now globally, I do that in countries, about 20 countries all over the world, is to sit and be empathetic about what their needs are. Do you need literacy? Do you need health? Do you need something other than that? Do you need women's rights to be respected? All of it is based on literacy, by the way. And I have to use empathy as I do that. And this all is pretty much summed up in what I learned from a person who is what I call an indigo. She's here for the second time. And she said to me, you are here to change humanity. I said, what? Are you kidding me? I cried all the way home and I established my mantra. My age justifies my wisdom. My developed clarity teaches the excitement of awareness and ignites the spark of action and change. And so this is what I have done on my path. I would like to offer you as well free resources, complimentary resources, one of which would be to have a clarity session with me on Zoom, complimentary. And if you want the PowerPoint that I'm showing you today, go ahead in the chat and say that you would like that. Also, I'm offering a focused excitement of awareness wellness group. And there's the link. Take a screenshot and be able to use it later. It's September 12th, 2nd and 4th Tuesdays. The third is a workshop that I'm doing, leveraging alliances in LinkedIn. And that's the 29th of September. Would love to have you bring an alliance, and we will show you a strategy on how to leverage them in LinkedIn. That's my business. And complimentary on my website is a virtual event engagement tips. And so that's what this is all about today. And I would like to leave with the thought of what I think is really important. And it's a comment that was made and is at all my emails from Jimi Hendrix. When the love of power is replaced with the power of love, the world will know peace. Thank you.
Wow.
Anybody there?
Yes.
Anybody there?
There was a moment of silence because we're so captivated by everything you just said around empathy. I want to say that you, thank you so much for a very informative presentation. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for embodying empathy so well on a personal and professional level. You're a true champ. And it's an honor. And I just want to, again, go over just a few points or highlight a few points that you raised. Thank you for drawing connection with the pandemic experience and in building the argument towards empathy. And of course, highlighting that, the opposite of love is complacency. I didn't really look at it that way, but thank you for bringing, bringing that to our attention. And of course, the opposite of empathy is sympathy, which people tend to, feel as though they need to gravitate towards, and we're not asking for that, right? No judgment, no pity. Thank you for that. And then, of course, things that hit home with me, you are 100% responsible for you, and you are indeed 100% responsible for you. And what other people think is none of your business. I love that, because that's really the things that actually I try to focus on in this life, to live and walk in empowerment. And that's how you do it. Brilliant. And of course, all about, presuming positive intent, making no assumptions. I like that one. No assumptions on this journey. Strategy during a challenge, and most importantly, clarity, awareness, action, and change. I remember that. So thank you so much, Jackie, for
you
that.
Did well. You absorbed a lot of that.
And I hope the audience here did get those points and more as well. So thank you. It meant a lot. Appreciate that. All right. So our next speaker on the agenda is none other than the amazing, exceptional Colleen Biggs, who is going to be covering top 4 strategies for, guess what? Emotional self-regulation. Now you got to tune in. You really got to tune in and hear all the techniques that Colleen has to offer us. Colleen, you're up on stage. You're next.
All right. So I have to spotlight myself and record myself here, get us going. How is everybody doing today? I just want to kind of do a check-in. I know the panelists are having a wonderful time, but you as attendees, I've opened up the chat for you to be able to send messages to all of us that are speakers that you see here. So at any time that you want to make a comment, at any time that you want to ask a question, I believe there will be time after I speak again today for us to open back up for a few minutes for questions, and we'll allow you to raise your hands and ask questions of the last few speakers that you've heard since since our last break. And I wanted to share a little bit about me as I get started. So I am a corporate dropout. I dropped out of, or I guess you could say I retired in my 40s in corporate America back in 2019. And started my own business. I started a community for women. And I did that specifically because I wanted so bad to be able to surround myself with women that were strong, with women that were building businesses, and with women that wanted to lift, empower, and elevate other women. I was no longer looking to hang out with women in corporate America that not only wanted to pull you down off the ladder, they wanted to then shoot arrows in your back to make sure you couldn't get back up the ladder. And that is kind of what I experienced in corporate America. So when I found those golden gems of women throughout my career, I clung to them like many women probably here today. And I utilized the mentorship and sponsorship of a lot of gentlemen and men throughout my career, which I'm so thankful that they took me under their wing to teach me how to become an amazing leader. But the one thing they couldn't teach me was self-regulation. I think strategies of self-regulation, we heard it from Angeline, from Dr. Susie, Jackie mentioned it, Clifford mentioned, every single speaker that has already spoken today has mentioned a lot about it is your need to self-regulate and not someone else's responsibility to be able to calm yourself down. Like Jackie mentioned, if you have a problem with the way that someone talks about a responsibility that you have, and you're needing you're reacting to that, you're not self-regulating your emotions. And so how do we do that? Angeline shared that how she self-regulates some of her emotions is to get away. I shared that I get away. That's how I self-regulate some of my emotions. So really, I would say the first thing that we need to focus on is self-monitoring. This is a self-assessment. So when we're feeling a certain way, so I work with a lot of clients. I've been a business consultant for over 22 years. That is what I've done. It's what I love. I kind of fell into it in corporate America. And I'll tell you that there is a lot of emotion that happens during the time that you're growing a business. For all of the CEOs, over 300 of them that I've worked with up to this point, I will tell you that self-regulating and understanding that I have to monitor what's happening right now when we are stressed or upset or feeling maybe an emotion of fear or anxiety, we can shut others down. We can cut others off. We can even call others names or push everyone away from us, right? Now, time away is good, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But what I'm talking about right now is self-assessing. So when you feel agitated, when you're feeling unhappy, when you're feeling an emotion, this is part of the emotional intelligence we're talking about today. When you're feeling an emotion, self-assess what you're feeling. Take a moment and self-assess. Am I feeling anxious because I'm scared about something I have going on tomorrow? So I'm creating that within this space of everybody around me. And now everyone else is feeling that too, right? So kind of take a self-assessment and pinpoint what is it and what emotion am I feeling? That's number one. The second one is going to be, we could say this two different ways: self-talk, self-instruction. So we can use that as pieces of things that we can say to ourselves, like mantras, right? So as we're self-assessing to figure out what's happening, and I have figured out that I am worried that I'm not going to get everything done before I go on vacation. I'm just worried, and I'm starting to feel this stress, and I know that I am, because I'm feeling like time is not on my side, and I'm not going to have everything done before I get ready to go on this vacation. And I felt that like a week and a half ago before I left on my vacation. My week was packed, and every day I would wake up and think, oh my gosh, this is such a full day. And so I would self-monitor and say, what exactly are you worried about in this moment? This is a good skill of something that you need to acquire. What am I feeling, and why am I feeling this? I'm overwhelmed because I have a lot to do. So if I just focus on at hand what's in front of me and just focus on that, when I'm finished that, I can then focus on the next thing. But to try and focus on the whole week or the whole month or the whole day is impossible, right? Of course, all of us are going to feel a little overwhelmed. So once I knew that, and it's like, okay, Colleen, and I talk to myself out loud. So I do suggest doing that, by the way. Most of the time, you're probably not around other people. And if you are, you can talk to yourself silently. But I would say things like, okay, Colleen, you got this, right? This is the one thing you have to focus on right now. You have prepared for it. You're ready. This is what you have to get done. Push everything else out of your mind. You're going to do great. Everything's going to be awesome. When we're finished this, you're going to move on to the next task. This is how I used self-talk to not only tell myself positive things, but to remind myself to stay focused in the moment now and not focused in another moment. And that can go on when you're sitting in corporate America and there's maybe there's a boss that's upset about something, or another person is venting about something. In that moment, you can self-monitor yourself to say, am I allowing that person to upset me? Or am I going to sit here and let them share the energy they need to share, but protect mine? This is emotional intelligence. I'm protecting my energy because I know that I don't need to absorb what's happening with them. I don't need to take that on. Have you ever noticed in a room when someone might be ranging or upset or doing something, other people take on their energy? We need to protect our energy. So now that I've talked to myself and I feel better, and I just keep reminding myself, this is all you can work on in this moment. This is what you need to work on in this moment. Then I know, okay, what is my goals? I can't tell you enough how much goal setting will change your life. If you don't have a goal, I don't know how you even know where you're going. What is the end game? It's like getting in a boat and not putting in coordinates and just going and expecting you're going to arrive at a destination. Why do we not set goals and expect we're going to arrive at this fictitious destination that we think is going to happen? It's no different than taking a dart and throwing it at a dartboard that has no bullseye. There are no points. It's a blank, round board. What fun is that? Like, how do you keep score? How do you assess? How do you measure where you are at any point in time? Goal setting is number one, if you ask me, on emotional self-regulation, because most people don't even know where they're at in their business. And if you go look at your numbers, they speak a lot. I remember earlier in the year, I was feeling a little down first quarter, and I think it was coming off the holidays, and there wasn't a lot of work to be done, and a lot of my colleagues were taking off time. And so, you kind of feel like that lethargic, I got to get back into work now. And all of a sudden your goals hit you and you're like, ugh, holy crap. I have all these goals I set for myself back in October and November. My vision board is filled with all these things, and just whoosh, I feel that overwhelm. I have all of these goals I have to do. So I said, okay, Colleen, we're going to set our sights on what I have to get done this month in January, February, March to hit my goals in the first quarter. Many women around me know that I work on a 12-week cycle because I love working on quarters. It works for me. So I set my goals on that cycle. As I was approaching mid-March, I was feeling like, in my mind, I wasn't doing as well as I thought I was doing. I wasn't getting the things done that I needed to get done. I hadn't created some of the events that I was looking to do. I hadn't drawn in the income that I had expected. So I did something interesting. I went back and I measured because I was thinking, to me, it feels like I'm not doing that well. But I went back and measured first quarter of last year to the first quarter of this year. And I was like, are you kidding me? My income was better. My production was better. My conversion was better. But in my mind, because I didn't have the numbers in front of me, I thought, because I felt this way, that I was doing worse than last year. I was actually doing better. And then in the areas that I felt like I needed assistance, so that one gave me the boost. But then where I felt like I was dropping a little low, that was when I went in and decided, all right, I'm really going to push on these specific areas now. Those are the areas I'm going to focus on. So your goal setting will change throughout the year. Know that. But goal setting is an effective strategy for self-regulating. So if you don't have goals, set goals. The fourth thing I want you to write down, I hope you're writing these down. The first one, self-monitoring. Second one, self-instruction, or you can call it self-talk. Third one was goal setting. The last one is self-reinforcement. I send every single one of my clients a magic marker, I guess you would call it. And this magic marker can be written on any window, any mirror, any whiteboard. And they always ask me, why did you send me one black magic marker? What was that about in my welcome package? And I say, it's for you to write down your goals. It's for you to write down something that inspires you. It's for you to write down a reminder you need to tell yourself every single day. The reason why I created the community of business building women that I did is because I wanted to surround myself with positive fuel. But what happens when I'm not plugged into that positive fuel? What happens when I'm not at a networking event? What happens when I'm not on a workshop or a mastermind with them? What happens to my psyche and my self-talk when I'm not around them, when we're telling each other how awesome we are, or texting each other, telling the other person, you got this, you're going to crush it. Our clients today, we're all in this mass string, just rooting each other on for the things that we have going on today. And it fills you with fuel of positivity. So self-reinforcement is going to help you get over the anxiety, the depression, because you now have reminders, you have people in your life that are reminders, and you have reminders written down of the things that you need to remind yourself every single day. When I'm on vacation and you start getting toward the end of vacation, and I'm sure if I said raise your hand, probably everybody in the room would raise their hand once on this. You start feeling like, oh man, here we go, back to reality. When Angeline was packing up her bag, leaving Fiji, she was like, oh, got to get home. There's probably 500 emails waiting for me. I have to get back to reality and do all of this, right? That's immediately when we start feeling that, okay, I've got to start assessing, why do I feel this way? And then you have to remind yourself, you set this time aside for you to be out on vacation. Everyone knew you were gone. You set the time aside, coming back, that you're going to have a few more emails than you did before you left. But everyone's going to expect that you were gone because you told them you were gone. So why would we put all of that pressure back on ourselves and cause ourselves to be depressed, cause ourselves to have anxiety, say things to ourselves that do not support ourselves? Meaning we would say things to ourselves, something like this. Oh my gosh, I suck. I'm never taking vacation again. I'm never going to catch up. Why do I think that I can just leave and go rest and relax because I'm getting back? The sky is falling. All these problems happen while I'm gone. Like, I kind of think to myself, all right, Mrs. Ego. Okay, Mr. Ego, you're so great that you can't leave on vacation and trust your team and everyone around you that they've got it covered. Please, let's just get that in check right now, right? So I share that with you today because we've all had these experiences. Either we've allowed other people to affect our energy, and because they're angry, and I'm going to tell you, in my first marriage, I allowed my children's frustration, whatever was happening with my babies as I was raising them, my husband's frustration rub off on me. And I would say things like, you're making me mad. You're making me cry. You're making me upset. I would tell my children this. I'm guilty of this and wish I could go back and change that. But I didn't have the emotional intelligence back then to understand. Nobody was making me cry. Nobody was making me mad. Nobody was making me frustrated. Remember that bubble we talked about, that energy bubble? I kind of want you to think as your EQ as this bubble of you, self. You are the one responsible for the change. You are the one responsible for the emotion. You are the one responsible for the goal setting. Nobody else is. It's not someone else's fault if they didn't get you to your goals. You should have assessed that along the way and made changes. There are a number of skills that go along with this. Another one is creating space. The minute that emotion happens, get yourself some space. I will tell you, I have the best marriage. My husband and I have been married 16 years this time around. And when I need space, I just walk away and say, I need some space. I mean, my husband and I, we don't ever argue, but we have communication that's extremely open. And when you have open communication, sometimes you're not going to agree on things, and that's okay. But I have enough respect to hear the other person out. And if I feel myself elevating in emotion, I'll just say I need a minute. So maybe in times when we see people pop off and they're really upset and things are going on, they just need a minute. Why do we put a 2-year-old in timeout? What do they need? A minute. They're a little overstimulated and they don't know how to set a goal, how to self-reinforce in the moment. They don't know how to self-instruct or assess. They don't know how to do that. We have to teach them how to do that. So we separate them from what's happening in a situation to give them a minute to think. Is that not what we do? Yes. And as moms, we give ourselves a minute to separate ourselves from them so we don't harm a child, so that they can have a moment, we can have a moment, and we all separate ourselves. Do we not? Why did that stop when we became adults? Respectfully, if you need to walk away from a person or a situation, walk away. I've done it many times. I have actually been in the energy of people several times over and over again and decided I need to create space between me and that person for a little while. You get to choose this. This is part of EQ. You get to choose. You do not need to, because you want to be nice and you don't want to upset the other person, that you need to stay in that energy field. There have been people right away that I've started working with, no matter what it is, might be in a community, it might be doing something else. And right away I realized, I don't think I want to do business with this person often or in the future. There was something about them that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. That was my emotional intelligence, that flare going off saying, hey, 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 ding, 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 ding. You are noticing that this person's not on your same vibe. Is it my responsibility to change another person? No, I actually realized that a long time ago. It's why I got divorced. I thought I could change him. I can totally change him to be exactly who I want him to be. The answer to that is no. But he's saying, no, you can't. We cannot change other people. We can only change ourselves. So notice what you're feeling. Notice what you're feeling. Become aware of what you're feeling. Like really become aware. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling this? Maybe naming what you're feeling. A lot of times we think it's fear. I say it's false evidence appearing real. Fear doesn't actually exist. You're born with two things. It's the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. That's it. It's all you're born with. So whatever other fear you think you have today has been made up from the time, like I have a fear of dogs. And probably everyone always says, oh, you're scared of dogs. Have you been attacked? It's the first question I get. The answer is yes, several times. Therefore, every time I see a dog, I either want to run or I want to freeze up thinking that if I just stand there, maybe they won't see me, like I'm invisible, right? I get behind people to protect me. I've gotten on top of vehicles, on the top of the roof of vehicles. We're not talking hoods. We're talking the roof of vehicles. That happens when I'm scared. I've also watched other people be attacked by dogs. Now, I was not born with that, but because of what has happened over the years, that has caused this fear in me. So I'm going to ask you a question. When I show up at Jackie's house and she has the cutest little 14-pound poodle, and I'm like, oh, Jackie, your dog is so cute. And she's like, oh, he's so great. He won't harm you. I immediately go back to all my past trauma and I create a fear in the moment that her dog is going to attack me. Now, her dog's never attacked anyone in their life. Am I really in danger? The answer to that is no, I'm not in danger, but I create it for myself in the moment and I'm not self-regulating at all. Because if I'm self-regulating, I'm realizing my environment, I'm realizing there is no danger, and I'm realizing that it just needs me to take a moment to get comfortable, to know that I can trust Jackie's dog, that her dog will not attack me. And I will tell you, I've walked into several homes, my neighbor across the street including, and they're like, oh, don't worry, so-and-so won't. And the next thing I know, the dog's attacking my leg. Like, I don't know if I just walk around as a nice looking biscuit for dogs or what it is that happens. It's possible. But as you can see, I need to use my emotional intelligence as self-regulation in the area of dogs and animals a lot. I need to assess my situation, control my self-talk, understand what is my goal here. My goal is to hang out with my friend, Jackie. My goal is for us to have a nice evening. So if I'm going to create this energy in the room where I'm scared and I need her to put the dog away and I'm just, walking in with this big ego, is that going to create a situation where Jackie and I can relax, be around each other, and have a nice conversation? The answer to that is no, it won't. So I have to accept my emotion that I have around that made up fear. And instead of saying that it's false evidence appearing real, maybe we say it's face everything and rise. And I say, oh, I could take that dog. It's not very big. I think I could protect myself. Maybe I put myself in a situation or a position in the living room where the dog doesn't want to come around me anymore and the dog's sitting on Jackie's lap. What can you do in any situation, in business, in speaking, in a sales conversation, in networking, to control your emotion? Here's a little trick. Whatever anyone else is thinking or doing or saying about you is not really about you. It has been and always will be about them. Back in the day, when people would label me things, I let them stick. Back in corporate America, I walked around with a lot of labels. I remember at one time I had a manager and I climbed the corporate ladder extremely fast, became an executive right under the CEO before I left. And I will tell you that I let a lot of those labels stick. And it wasn't until I had decided that that wasn't me, that what they said was me wasn't me. That was when I decided to unchain myself from those labels and walk away and live the life that I desired as an entrepreneur. And I'm not saying the entrepreneur life is for everyone, but I decided that I needed to live that life as an entrepreneur. So I'm going to ask you today, what labels are you allowing others to stick on you that is causing your EQ to be low? Because you're allowing others to self-monitor you. You're allowing others to monitor you. You're allowing others to talk to you in a bad way. You're allowing others to tell you what your goals are. Are you kidding me? Don't ever do that. You're also allowing others to reinforce who you're not because you know deep down who you are. I just gave you the 4 opposites of everything that I have been discussing this entire time. And what I've been discussing is number 1, self-assess. You got to know where you are. Number 2, self-instruction. What is the talk you're going to say to yourself in a situation, any situation? Goal setting. Do not let others set your goals. They're your goals. And do not let anyone else reinforce negative behaviors upon you. You get to self-enforce how you feel. That is where my confidence comes from, because it is not the responsibility of anyone else to help me feel a certain way. I don't need 50 million likes on my Instagram. I don't need vanity likes of someone saying, that was great, Colleen, you're amazing. Those are temporary. They're called vanity. They're very temporary. You need to believe in yourself in here. That's where emotional intelligence comes from, the inside. So you need to create it yourself from the inside out. That is your biggest challenge today from me as you walk away, is that you're going to self-assess, self-regulate, goal set, and talk positive to yourself, because you will do the most damage, believe it or not. But it is your responsibility to step up to the plate to do it. And I know each one of you here can. And we started off the day with Clifford talking about visualizing a better version of himself in the future, visualizing winning. You all can do this. Visualize it for yourself. Become a better version of you every single day. That's it. It's all it takes. And Saskia, that is how you self-regulate emotions.
That is so powerful. Thank you so much. I couldn't have thought about a better person to bring that topic. So well done. Thank you. And I'm sure the audience has so much to go and practice out there based on that wisdom that you poured in just now. So thank you again, Colleen. I just want to highlight again a few things Colleen mentioned here in emotional self-regulation. So remember, focusing on self-assessment of your emotions. That is key. Ask yourself, what are you worried about in this moment? And try not to overwhelm yourself by overthinking or planning too far in advance. Self-talk is also important. You use it to stay present. And it's important for you to stay present in that moment. Protect your energy at all costs. It is key so that you wouldn't absorb all that bad energy or influences from others. And of course, highlight was goal setting. Goal setting is a priority for emotional regulation. We cannot stress that enough. It will change your life. Don't I know that? What is your end game? We ask ourselves. Look at the past to reference your status. And of course, these help beautifully with self-regulation, self-monitoring, self-instruction, goal setting, self-reinforcement. Beautifully, those pillars work for building up your self-regulation, the key ingredient for healthy living. Healthy living. No one is making you do anything. Thank you, Colleen, for that. Brilliant. Take a pause when you find yourself elevating in emotion, when you find yourself dysregulating. So with everything, take everything and rise, control your emotions. And of course, by all means, believe in yourself. No one is going to do it for you. You have to believe in yourself. Thank you so much, Colleen.
Oh, you're so welcome.
That was just wonderful. Yeah.
I think, Saskia, we might have about 5 minutes if you wanted to take some questions, maybe about 5-8 minutes. You want to see if anyone in attendance would like to ask any of our previous speakers some questions?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Anyone?
You can raise your hand. So as an attendee, all you have to do is raise your hand and then I can bring you in for you to ask your question. Maybe you would love to make a comment, but we've heard from Angeline Benjamin. We've heard from Jackie Zaccoli, and then you just heard from myself, Colleen Biggs. If either one of you would like to make a comment or raise your hand, now would be the next time to do that in the next 5 minutes until we bring in Buddy Thornton.
Thank you, Colleen. Anyone, don't be shy. It's an awesome opportunity you do not want to miss.
I think this is your mom.
Yes.
Oh,
I love what you said there, Colleen. That I had to use a lot of that throughout my career for the 6 years of being a teacher in elementary school, special education. I had to use a lot of that. Self-affirmations. I even taught my students how to use that to go from day to day and from strength to strength. So believing in yourself, self-affirmations every day, talk to yourself. Because sometimes you hear the other side, the negative side saying, don't do this, you can't do this, you will not achieve this. But you have to you have to listen to your emotions, your positive emotions, your positive thinking. So I really applaud what you said there. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
thank you so much, Mom. Appreciate that.
Angie.
Anyone else?
Yes, Colleen, I just want to just tell you that's so energizing speaks. And because to me, that's especially your goal setting. And a lot of times, others think, okay, I don't need to have a goal. I just want to have free whatever I want to do. That is not what I think people think what goal is. Goal can be personal, it can be professional. But sometimes we think that to have a goal is because we're working, we have a professional life. But personal goal to me is just as important to have. So I just really like what you said. And then about not labeling, allowing. How many times we, including myself, especially when I was at corporate too, that, we allow ourselves to be labeled because we thought that is the right thing to do. And so thank you for that reminding to all of us that it is our lives, and no matter what, sometimes people will push us, but we just have to learn to push back and saying, it's my life. It's none of your business. Like, Colleen said, it's none of your business. It's my life. I'll take responsibility. So thank you for that reminding, Colleen, that and also Jacqueline, none of your business. It's our lives.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Take
Angie.
charge for your healing and empowerment. Thank you, Dr.
We have
Andrews.
one more. Darren just jumped in with his hand up. If Darren, you
All
want to
right,
go ahead.
Darren.
Hey, folks. Wow, this has been such a great day for my brain as far as being fed with all this brain food and all this great knowledge that you guys are giving. I just wanted to reflect on Colleen's 4 strategies, and the ones that stuck out to me the most. That's number 2, self-talk, and number 3, goal setting. I have this thing that I use. I call it my mini me. And, I've learned that, you speak to yourself over 13,000 times in a day. And it's super important what you tell yourself. And I like to tell my friends and family that I have a really love-hate relationship with my mini me. When you wake up in the morning, you have a goal, and here comes that voice again telling you not to do something. And you got to say like, hey, back off. I said I'm going to do this. We're going to do this today. I don't care what you say, little voice in my head. I'm going to do this today. And the only reason what helps me accomplish to fight against my mini me is goal setting, is that I have to remind him that, hey, you set a goal to do this. So what's stopping you from doing this now? Because the only thing that's stopping me is me. And of course, my mini me, who always wants to take the least resistance way out and doesn't want to use any energy or doesn't want to put any effort. And I understand the biology of why that is, but it's such a good thing to have good self-talks with yourself, because from my experience, I know a lot of individuals who don't have a good rapport with themselves or their mini me's, and they speak so many negative things into their work, so many negative things about themselves. And it's like, it's not to say that those things are the reality. It's just that you kind of convinced yourself that it is reality. And once you can get yourself out of that convincing to more like pushing and progress, then it really worked. But I love self-talks, and I love goal settings as well. Thank you, Colleen, for that.
Oh, you're so welcome. By the way, Darren, you're on your way, man. You're awesome. So
Oh, thank you.
I'm just saying that, like, you've got a good career in front of you, and I love where your head's at. And so congratulations.
Yes, he is. He's the winner.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. So I believe we want to go ahead, and if no one has any more questions, we can go ahead with the rest of the programming and welcome Mr. Buddy Thornton. And he's going to be presenting on leveraging your empathy skill set to optimize conflict resolution. And I can't think of a better topic for us to hear today. Mr. Buddy, you have the floor. Welcome.
Saskia, I really appreciate the prompt and the intro. It's very important, this topic that we're talking about today, emotional intelligence. And a lot of people here recognize that empathy is a huge component of emotional intelligence. But a lot of people, unfortunately, cannot define what empathy truly is. Most people think that empathy is being able to feel what other people feel. And that's such a small part, but a small component of it. Empathy is not feeling like another. Empathy is understanding the projected feelings and the heightened awareness of the why that person is carrying around with them. It's one thing to be able to embed yourself in their feelings. It's another thing entirely to understand why they have those feelings. And true empathy means that you can literally crawl up into yourself and identify what they're feeling within yourself. So that's how empathy works. There's other components of empathy. There's two different types of empathy. One is cognitive empathy. Cognitive empathy is the ability to recognize their suffering within yourself. You have to be able to see that. You have to be able to bear that in there. And you need to be able to use cognitive empathy to create mental imaging so that you can literally determine, if you were in their scenario, how would you feel? How would you behave? And then you can identify and understand what they're feeling and behaving. The other type of empathy, emotional empathy, is really, it's an organic empathy. Every human is born with some level of empathy. People who have ASPD, antisocial personality disorder, bury their empathy very early in their lives, and they become a problem socially, and they project out as being a problem for society, and they usually end up in the legal system. But emotional empathy is so important because that's where you literally can identify the co-suffering. You literally see them in you and you in them, and that's where empathy gets its power from. The cognitive ability is where we work at in the conflict resolution space, because we can't guarantee that we can actually organically pull emotional empathy out of anybody who's in the group. So, Colleen, if I could share the screen for a little bit.
You have access.
All righty. Well, can everybody see my slides?
Yes, absolutely. You can go ahead and full present.
I'm gonna do it this way. A lot of people don't understand that empathy is a human binding emotion. It's very important that people recognize that. So when you leverage your empathy skill set to optimize conflict resolution, what you're actually doing is you're triggering things that have been within your genetic makeup for literally thousands of years. We all are familiar with a lot of different versions of this quote: walk with me for a while, my friend, you in my shoes, I in yours, and then let us talk. The Indians always say, walk a mile in my moccasins before you criticize. Those are all things that are all part of every culture across humanity. And yet a lot of people don't understand that that can be empathy, but that also can be the flip side. That can also lead us down a path to sympathy or commiseration. And sympathy is a very poor substitute for true empathy. Sympathy does not come across well. I would rather people empathize with me. I don't want anybody's sympathy. And that's pretty much a modern affect. We don't really cling to sympathy because it feels disingenuous. But when we pivot a little bit, we have to understand that it's all about the daily conflict. It's all about the microaggressions. It's all about how we perceive other people and how other people perceive us. Everything in nature is predatory in nature, and I felt that this picture showed it very well. We all have demons who are coming after us, and we're like the predated duck in the picture, where we are trying to figure out exactly where we belong in this schematic. Can we get away? Can we survive? Can we find a way to interact? Can we avoid the problem? There's a lot of different things that are in play here. But let's look at empathy exactly the way it is. Seeing with the eyes of another, listening with the ears of another, and feeling with the heart of another. Now, if we get that from an emotional empathy origin point, that's so empowering because it's organic, it's natural, it feels good within us. But some people don't always go there. We need to lead them there. And as a third-party neutral, I start with that dynamic in the room. I understand that we have two people who are in conflict, maybe more people in conflict, but there's that invisible other party in the room. And the other party in the room is just like another third-party neutral. The relationship between the people is literally in the room and should be considered. So when you're seeing through the eyes of another, can you also add seeing through the eyes of the relationship? If you're the relationship and you're looking at these two people who are battling with each other in conflict, are you comfortable? Can you survive the battle? Can you move forward? Those are very, very important questions that we answer as third-party neutrals, as mediators. But then there's other components, you know. One of the things, before I open up this slide, is we use an affect called trading places. Now, I'm sure a lot of people who are older will remember Eddie Murphy's movie Trading Places, where he traded places with Dan Aykroyd, and they had to live completely different versions of themselves. And the understanding that they got out of that trading places environment is exactly what empathy is supposed to do for human beings. Yes, the movie is a comedy, but it's also very, very apropos for what we're talking about. You know, we have to learn how to look at the world through other people's eyes. Not only that, but as a mediator, I ask the parties before they even start to learn the other party's position and then be able to defend it as if they were the other party. And my goal there is to trigger empathy, to trigger understanding of the other party. And what happens is we end up smoothing out the power dynamic in the room. If someone believes that they have a lot more power in the room, we want to remove that by having them defend the other party's space and identify with that party. So there's a few things that we have to look at, and these are all empathy-laden quotes. You know, empathy isn't just listening, it's asking the questions whose answers need to be listened to. You may even know the answer to a question that you ask, but does everyone in the room know it? And does everyone in the room have the same perspective as you? Can you live within the perspective of another person? And can you accept their right to have that perspective? Those are all things that play into empathy, bringing the two parties together. Empathy requires inquiry as much as imagination. We all think we know what the other person is thinking, but are we willing to ask? And then are we willing to live with the answer we get? Empathy also requires that you walk into the room knowing that you absolutely know nothing. Now, we know that's a false dichotomy, right? We all have some type of intelligence level. And because we all have some type of intelligence level, that's a very hard concept to ask people to embrace. But when I ask somebody, assume that you are meeting this person for the very first time, and you want to know not only what they're thinking, but the basis, what is the foundation of what you're thinking and why you think that way. And instead of negating it or putting it aside and saying, no, I reject that automatically, take the time to consider it. because the final quote from Leslie Jameson is very, very important, and that's what the picture in the slide is designed to do. Empathy means acknowledging a horizon of context that extends perpetually beyond what you can see. No matter how much you know about another person, and I've been married almost 50 years and my wife still can surprise me, okay? This is the dynamic that humans bring to the table. You do not know everything about a topic. You do not know everything about a person. You do not know their backstory. You do not know their origin story. You don't know if they got up yesterday and someone committed a huge microaggression against them that they're still harboring in their heart. All those things play into understanding that empathy means assume that you do not have all the answers. And since you do not have all the answers, you need to open the door to looking through the world through their eyes. So maybe you might get a few more answers that you don't have. You know, I've used this slide in a lot of different contexts, but you know, you need to see their world. You don't need to see your world, and they need to see your world. You need to appreciate other people as human beings. All this is all about emotional intelligence, but it's also about extending empathy. And if we start a lot of times with cognitive empathy, where we help them critically analyze the other person, what happens is organic empathy pops right out. It's like, wow, all of a sudden they do actually have true feelings for the other people. Can we understand those feelings? Can we understand their origins? Can we know what we're applying to add our biases, add the things that we thought we knew that all of a sudden now we realize are incorrect in this context. It doesn't mean they're incorrect overall, but they may be incorrect for this relationship and this dynamic and this conflict. And then the final thing, and this is where the mediator applies strength to the equation, communicate understanding, because mediators reframe the problem. They also reframe all of the potential solutions that get brought to the table, and they help the parties through empathy and through caring about extending the relationship beyond the problem. They come to solutions that work for both parties. Now, we don't always succeed. We succeed about 65% of the time. The other 35% of the time, there's a lot of things we can't control. Like, number one, we can't control intent. If someone comes into the room and they intentionally don't want to have an agreement, or they don't want to solve a problem, or they have a false relationship, or they have a manipulative relationship with the other party, we won't know that until they expose it. But once they expose it, we can call them out. And that's when we say, you know, this is not going to be a mediation that comes to a final agreement, you know, and we have to accept that that's not our failing. It's a failing of the process. But I love this quote. This is a very important quote. Until we have seen someone else's darkness, we don't really know who they are. So if you can't look through the world through somebody else's eyes, can you really criticize them, or can you really label them? We've already talked about that. I think everyone here agrees labeling is very bad. Blaming, shaming, and judging is very bad. We don't blame, shame, or judge anyone. We want to make sure that we start the day by trying to understand where the barriers lie. And the biggest barrier is if we have not seen someone's darkness, we can't possibly know who they are.
Going to the post office.
You know,
I'm going to the post office.
Until we have forgiven somebody's
But I'm
darkness.
keeping my computer on.
Oh, somebody's popping in here. Anyways, you know, empathy requires us to go through and decide, okay, now that I've chosen to be empathetic, I've chosen to see the world through their eyes, can I really understand what they're bringing to the table? And even if it's something that I don't embrace fully, can I allow them the room to have it? Can we give them the room to believe it? Can we give them the room and honor their choices? And by doing that, we extend what humans need and crave more than anything else. We extend love. And when we extend love, that is an outward manifestation of empathy, completely empowered through human emotion. And that takes us full circle back to emotional intelligence. If you can't function within this realm, then you really need a third-party neutral or a person who's a professional in this area to help you grow this competency. Because if you don't have it, you're going to run into situations where you're never going to understand the other person. You're never going to be able to develop a powerful relationship. You're not going to be able to resolve conflict when it comes at you. And believe me, everyone deals with conflict. I have yet to meet a person I've ever talked to who can say, nope, I'm 50 years old and I've never had any problems I've had to deal with. That's just impossible. It doesn't happen. So I welcome anyone to reach out. You have questions. You really need to understand that the goal of emotional intelligence is to understand other people and be able to interact with them in a positive social environment. But the goal of empathy is not to be aware of them and wear their shoes and wear their clothes, but to understand the reason behind their why. It's not your reason, it's their reason. Honor it, respect it, give them the dignity of space, and that's where we go. And Saskia, I'll bring it back to you.
Thank you so much, sir. Really appreciate all that knowledge and insights on how we can optimize conflict resolution with the powerful empathy denominator. So I really did like the fact that you spoke on, leveraging third-party officials as much as possible in conflict resolution, and the different types of empathy, whether it's, emotional empathy, cognitive empathy, right? It's critical. And of course, the whole saying about walking a mile in my shoes before you criticize me. I did like the fact that you associated that more with, that can lead to sympathy instead of empathy. So brilliant there. So in all, we were very much well informed about how we can use that empathy gift for healthy living with others. So, and great conflict management. So thank you again for that. And I guess I want to highlight this other last point that you raised that spoke to my heart. And it's really about extending love to others for empathy manifestation.
Well,
and of course, yes.
A lot of times people ask me this question. They ask me, you've been married almost 50 years. How is that possible? And have you ever had conflict with your spouse?
Yes.
And of course, my answer is, of course, I've had conflict with my spouse. You can't even live in the same home day after day, year after year without having some level of conflict. And
absolutely.
People diverge and then they converge. It's an ebb and flow in every relationship. But what we do and how we conquer through empathy is we understand that even without a mediator, you don't need a mediator, because guess what? The mediator in your room psychologically is your relationship. When you are looking at the other person, you're getting so angry because they really upset you. And Colleen made a very good point about her first marriage. She was trying to fix somebody. Guess what? We're not fixing anybody. We only control ourselves. And choice dynamics is something that I teach all the time. Don't try to work on other people. Work on yourself and your response to other people, because that's all you got. And so
that's all you can do.
If you're in a relationship and it's a relationship you honor and you want to last forever, which of course I want my marriage to last forever, I have to honor the relationship. The relationship ends up being more important than either one of the parties. And if you can do that organically within the two of you by saying, this is our relationship and this is broken, let's get it fixed because the relationship is that important, then empathy has to take hold.
Of course.
Because you care about the other person. And I don't hold sympathy for my wife. She didn't fall down and break her foot, but I empathize with, she has to deal with me on a daily basis. I empathize she has to work with the kids, the grandkids, the great grandkids. I understand. It's all about empowering empathy to be the trigger that allows you to drive and sustain a very healthy relationship. And if nothing else is gotten out of this point in time, I want everyone to understand it. You control your relationship. You don't control the other party, but you control how you honor the relationship. And by honoring the relationship, you're going to benefit the other party.
I love that. You control how you honor the relationship. We honor others. We honor ourselves with empathy. Thank you so much, Mr. Buddy. Brilliant. Really appreciate this. So, audience, We'll now move on to our next speaker of the day. She is Crystal Blackwell, and Crystal will be speaking on respectfully and confidentially exercising boundaries without jeopardizing self. And I can't think of a better topic, a better person to speak on this topic. Crystal, welcome. It's so great to see you.
You bet.
You're on
Thank
stage.
you. And thank you for having me talk on such a subject that I think that everyone can put in their toolkit. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Pauline, can we give that a right? Okay, Pauline.
I'm going to go ahead and slideshow, and if you guys can tell me when my slideshow is up. Am I in good shape?
Good shape.
Yes, you are.
All
All
good.
right, perfect. So I won't be looking directly at you sometimes because I have my dual monitors, but for sure I am definitely plugged in and see that you're there supporting. So we're going to talk about respectfully and confidently setting boundaries without jeopardizing yourself. So I think people oftentimes think that boundaries kind of takes away from us, but actually it adds to who we are. So a little bit about me, I'll just go through this quickly because I really want to dive into what we're going to talk about today. I'm the founder of Crystal Clear Results. I'm a consultant, trainer, coach. I work with organizations, mid-sized to large, even some executive coaching. But my goal is to help organizations build a healthy workplace. And that requires diversity, equity, inclusion training, that requires soft skills training, that requires leadership training. I have a certified life coach, I'm certified D&I, organizational development. I love going in and digging in and helping organizations with their strategy. Married, mom, community supporter, and I've gotten some awards that's really helped me just sort of give me confirmation that I'm in my right space and in my purpose. I absolutely love what I do, and I'm looking forward to sharing this with you. So today's agenda, we are going to cover defining boundaries, like what is it, the different types of boundaries. You guys, I'm going to be straight up. There's so many different types of boundaries. I mean, we really could do a workshop on just all the different types of boundaries. I'm going to high level those. We're going to do a boundaries quiz. So we're going to take a moment. I'm going to ask you to self-check. So if you have a pen and paper nearby, that's awesome. You can use your phone, but I'm kind of old school. Pen and paper works. And how to set boundaries with confidence. So first of all, what are boundaries? Boundaries is an invisible line that defines what behaviors are acceptable for an individual. So they're just like an invisible line that you have. What behaviors are acceptable to me? So boundaries are personal. They're your boundaries. So my boundaries are going to be different than Buddy's boundaries. Buddy's boundaries are going to be different than Colleen's boundaries. We're all going to show up differently. And there's different types of boundaries. So boundaries can also be based on time and space. So you may have a boundary, like for an example, say work. I coach this a lot with executives. Sometimes that instant messaging at 10 o'clock at night is a boundary we have to stop. So maybe you send out a note to all of your staff and say, hey, I am no longer looking at my emails or responding to instant messaging after 10 p.m. That's a boundary. Again, boundaries can be something small, and also they can be something that can really be that you can place to prevent any types of trauma. So the different types of boundaries, we have physical boundaries, emotional boundaries. And as I'm going through that, just in your head, think about like what that could be and how that can show up for you. Time boundaries, material boundaries. Again, that's that invisible line that you place in for you, and boundaries are for you. Work boundaries, and that comes up a lot. I find that that's one that comes up at all levels, that people just seem to like not have boundaries. And since we're in a remote space, it's become like the wild, wild west of boundaries because people feel like they don't exist. And I'm helping organizations create more boundaries in the remote space than ever before. Social media boundaries, kind of think about that. Some people use that as a wild, wild west. Communication boundaries. That could be a tone. Hey, you can't speak to me in that tone. You can address me that way. Relationship boundaries. Think about all the boundaries we put up in for relationships, or maybe we should. And your personal values boundaries. Now, sometimes boundaries can feel ouchy to maybe those that are receiving them, but boundaries, again, are for you. That's your space. That's your invisible line. So what a boundary isn't is like the Great Wall of China, where it's just a wall that you cannot get by. And oftentimes we approach boundaries like it's the Great Wall of China. So I'm going to pause here just for 1 second. Does anyone want to share a boundary that they have that works for them? It's a personal boundary and you're comfortable sharing. And we'll just have one. Yes.
Give me 1 second. I have to, they raised their hands. Give them just one second.
Perfect.
Darren,
Okay.
Darren is here.
Yeah, hello.
I think I see Buddy's hand up.
Yeah, Darren is
All
here.
right.
Okay.
Darren is saying, how you doing? A boundary of mine is that I let my family members know and friends too that on my days off on Sundays is my Zen day. And it's my non-phone day as well. So a lot of my friends and families know that on Sundays is probably the worst time to be in contact with me, unless, of course, it's an immense emergency. Other than that, I set up boundaries on Sundays. I don't want to be bothered with anyone because throughout the week, I give them that open window to bother me as freely as they want. But on Sunday, it's non-negotiable.
Love it. Love it. Love that. See, it's not a wall. So what he has, he puts his boundaries up, he communicated out clearly, and he's in a safe space on Sunday. That's his Zen day. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I think Buddy has his hand up and we're going to continue to move on.
Yeah, the biggest boundary I have is it's a family boundary. What we do is we don't allow ad hominem attacks. If any kind of a discussion leads to blaming, shaming, or judging, we have to shut it down immediately, and then they have to discuss whatever their feelings are, whatever they're thinking, and get it straight before they can continue the conversation. And that's a non-negotiable boundary as well. I like the way Darren put that.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm hearing from yours, Buddy, relationship boundaries, communication boundaries, and a value, like that's a family value. And it's important enough for us to shut it down and take a break and then come back when we're ready to address that. So I love that, and that how you've communicated that to your family. So again, thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your boundaries. But again, boundaries work. And I think oftentimes we have to revisit them so that we can, again, restructure our space. Boundaries are for you. Boundaries are for you, not for others. They're like your own personal gift. So I'm going to ask a question. Why do we need healthy boundaries? Well, self-respect. It's important that we demonstrate our values and we deserve the respect. Folks, we deserve boundaries. Healthy relationships. It preserves your energy. I'm sure Darren on Sunday, he clearly said it, that Sundays are his Zen day. So that's where he's preserving, I'm sure, getting his energy. He's level setting, his well-being. Boundaries reduce stress. Also, they empower you. You're in control of your life. You're in control. And one way we take control of our life is we set these healthy boundaries. Also, it's personal growth. When you set boundaries, it allows you an opportunity to do some self-awareness and some development. Sometimes you may find yourself saying, I may need to lean into this area. I need some help here. Respect for others. It does encourages mutual respect. Buddy mentioned his family's like, there's certain conversations we're not going to have here. We have a family value boundary. And because of that, it drives respect and understanding within his family. It prevents resentment. It doesn't feel like initially, because sometimes boundaries can feel like a wall when it isn't. And, initially when you put a boundary out there, a person may not initially get it. But if you don't set a boundary, you can be resentful. So it also helps you become not resentful, not, not nitpicky, and not, sometimes a little grumpy. It really helps you because, and remember, boundaries are for you so that you have space for all the reasons why we have to create healthy boundaries. Conflict prevention. It reduces misunderstanding and conflict. Work-life balance. It supports and prevents work and burnout. I even think that, again, with this remote working and also with more of the hybrid back and forth, burnout is looking and feeling different. So boundaries are being set differently. And guess what? Say you set a boundary and it didn't work. That's okay. Just set a new boundary. I mean, sometimes we get it right and sometimes we don't. The thing is set boundaries so that you can be in a healthy space so you don't jeopardize yourself. And then you're able to really thrive in whatever space that you're in. Trust building, and that's a real big one because, again, everything with relationships, the foundation is trust, and it's being honest, and it's about talking, it's about setting those boundaries and having those conversations. And sometimes they're sticky, but look at it, it really does increase your trust, which of course leans into your healthy boundaries. And decision making good choices, aligning those boundaries with your values. And I think Buddy did a good example sharing his boundary, but really how it ties into their family values. So I'm going to ask you here to take a moment, like a quick little Zen moment we're going to take as a group, a quick little Zen moment, and kind of collect yourself. You're going to close your eyes because we're going to walk into an exercise. I'm going to move through it a little quick. I'm going to tell you that because of time, but I do think it's a value. And we're going to go, and I'm going to ask you to look at the list that's going to pop up on the screen, and just on your paper, just either make a quick little note. You may want to take a picture of this with your phone. If you want to do a little bit later, you're more than welcome. And I also have this for you as a giveaway later, but we can walk through this. But this is like a quick assessment about boundaries. So your personal boundaries quiz, weak boundaries or no boundaries. And so I'm going to read through these and you just kind of make a little note or take a picture, whatever works for you. I put the needs and wants of others before my own. If that's you, put a check mark there. I agree with others to avoid conflict. I find myself unable to say no to things. That's another workshop too. I'm afraid to say no out of guilt or fear. I allow others to speak for me. I find myself accepting poor treatment from others. I find myself doing more than my share participating in relationship. I try to fix other people and their problems. I attempt to control other people. I don't trust myself or others. Now, if you're taking the disc and you're blue, or you're my science and my math and my engineer, please do not overthink these statements. Give me your first question. Check off the first one. Don't overthink it. Next one, healthy boundaries. These are a little bit longer. Just going to pause here and let you go through them. I'll just quickly go through them. I'm able to set personal boundaries that protect my body, my energy, my time, and my other resources without feeling guilty, fearful, or stressed. I can comfortably express my true feelings regardless if they seem to be negative or positive. Remember, check the ones that you feel that you are. I am able to respect others for who they are and do not attempt to change or fix them. I understand that conflict is a natural part of intimate relationships, and even though it may not be enjoyable. No one likes that, but it's part of relationships. I'm willing to end a relationship rather than to continue to allow the other person to hurt me. I respect others' feelings, needs, preference, and don't take them on as my own. That's a pretty big one. I had to get over that one some years ago. I'm able to make my own decisions and look out for my interest while taking others' perspectives into account. I am not afraid to disappoint or anger others by stating my opinion. I take responsibility for my own feelings, while others can take responsibility for their feelings. Healthy boundaries, and check mark or take a picture or whatever, which ones line up under where you're at. Rigid boundaries. If your boundaries are really rigid, I feel frustrated when people's views don't agree with mine or different. I have a tough time acknowledging and expressing my feelings and rarely consider feelings of others. I often use anger or intimidation to get my way. I keep people at an emotional distance. Again, these are folks with rigid boundaries. I am comfortable and physical contact unless I initiate it. I'm uncomfortable, sorry. Said comfortable there. I criticize others when they don't do things according to my plan. I refuse to play if things aren't done according to my rules. I become very upset if anyone borrows something of mine, even if they ask first. I always expect something in return for help or generosity. I am infrequently invite people into my space, home, physical. So this reminds me of, when I read this, the rigid boundaries of my godson, who's 2. Straight up toddler behavior right here. I'm like, that's him. But he's a toddler. Again, look at those totals. So here, whatever bucket you fell in and those different types of ones. So we had the rigid boundaries. If you have, check your total mark there. We have the healthy boundaries, check your mark there. That means you're in a good space, you're doing some good things. And then weak boundaries or no boundaries. So your own personal assessment, you don't have to share. This is for you. Whatever bucket you fall in, then you know where you are. If it's rigid, you may want to take a look at it. I need to loosen up my boundaries. If you have no boundaries, you may want to put some around you. If you have healthy boundaries, just continue doing what you're doing. But really think about your personal boundaries. And is it really fueling you so that you can thrive and you can be healthy? All right, so we're going to wrap up here with how to set boundaries with confidence without jeopardizing yourself. So here's some tools if you need maybe some coaching or some guidance around how to set boundaries. Know your limits, know yourself, know who you are. If you have limits on different things, then know what they are. Be very clear about them. Communicate clearly. Sometimes if I'm communicating a boundary, I may role play it, I may write it out, I may run it by someone, but communicate your boundaries very clear. You want to be very crystal clear about what it is that you want to set a boundary around. I do not want emails. I will not be responding to emails after 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. On the weekends, I will not be at all. And then, again, very clear. Everyone knows about me and the emails. I'm not that way. That's just an example. Plan ahead. I mentioned that. Kind of plan ahead. What are your boundaries? And boundaries, they can be tricky. Sometimes they pop up unexpectedly, or you may uncover a new boundary, like in a different situation. So if you're transitioning from one space to another, you may uncover new boundaries, and that's okay. That's okay. Stay calm and very respectful. And that's for you. That's a gift for you. Stay very calm. So it's good to share boundaries when you're in a good space. So if you're feeling like, boy, you're anxious or you're excited or maybe a little upset, that's not the time to really share boundaries, because it tends to not be respectful. But this is about you. Staying calm helps you, and being respectful not only helps the others, but you're respecting yourself. Set priorities. There are certain things that are priority. What's like a high priority? Now, if you have like lists and lists of boundaries, you may want to take a look at those and look at maybe your top 4 boundaries or your top 5. But think about the boundaries that really get in your way and jeopardize who you are. And you know what that is, because you don't feel good. You don't feel good about yourself. Use technology wisely. So, use technology to your advantage. I mean, I am I always use my do not disturb when I'm doing anything work related, typically, unless I'm waiting for a call, because I like to focus on whatever space I'm in. That's my technology boundary. I use my tools. I use my alarm clock to remind me of things. I just really use the technology I have available to me to this extent as a tool for boundaries. Practice self-care, huge, huge, huge. Whatever it is that you do in terms of taking care of yourself, practice it. If it's walking, if it's working out, if it's eating healthy, if it's hanging out with a really good friend, get a self-care regimen and follow it. That to me is, if nothing else, if you get nothing else out of this, set boundaries and practice self-care. And this is really huge. Learn to say no. No means not right now. If you're not good at saying no, here's a quick tip. If someone asks you to do something, to simply say, let me think about it. And then go back to them after you've role played, had to say no. You can go back and say, hey, thank you for inviting me to that event. I can't do that at this point. My plate is full, but I appreciate you thinking of me, and maybe next time. You just simply said no, but you said it differently. Avoid over-explaining. Just get it out. Just say what you need to say and mute. Don't go on and on and on and on, because what happens is you kind of talk yourself out of it and you end up talking yourself back into what you talked yourself out of. So don't over-explain. And for some people, they may need to practice before speaking to others, because you may be over-explainer, and that's okay. Just practice what you're going to say and how you're going to say it, and keep it short and sweet and to the point. Seek support if you need it. There's so much support out there. If you like to read books, there's books. If you want to talk to like a coach, you can talk to a life coach. Maybe you want to go to see a therapist. You really dig into some areas and create some life types of boundaries, but seek support. You are not alone in this journey at all. Stay consistent. What you say you're going to do it. Consistency pays. Evaluate and adjust. Is this boundary working for me? Is it not? What should I do? How am I going to adjust this? Always inspect what you expect. Evaluate and make the adjustments. I'm always adjusting my boundaries. Sometimes they're a little, maybe too rigid. Maybe they're too loose. And in conclusion, remember that setting boundaries is about maintaining a well-being and achieving a healthy work-life balance. Maybe you be an entrepreneur, or maybe you're a traditional corporate worker. It is not about being inflexible or rude, but rather about asserting your needs in a very respectful manner. Thank you.
Wow.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Crystal. That was just amazing. I couldn't keep up with my notes I was taking on this, and I realized that, wow, among so many others here probably feeling the same way, but there's lots of opportunity for me to reevaluate my boundaries. So thank you for that. Brilliant. Thank you for the whole checklist. It's very engaging. I'm sure everybody did their tally with their personal boundaries, rigid boundaries, healthy boundaries, to know exactly where they're at. And I thank you for that. And so I just want to just highlight the fact that you said that boundaries is not a wall.
Right.
All right. And let that, let that cement. They are not a wall. They are for you. It's for your protection.
Yes.
And I used to struggle with that. And it's so important for you to get over that so that you can actually live a healthy life. It goes hand in hand with self-care. So anyone who is struggling with that right now, just remember that. It's all that invisible line. It's set up for your protection because you want to be healthy. And if there's no healthy you have nothing to give to anyone else anyway.
Right.
Oh, brilliant. So that was amazing. And of course, folks, you can get a hold of the boundaries checklist. You will need that. Thank you, Crystal.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe here we'll be wrapping up with today's segment. Oh, wow. This has been such a full day, such an enlightening day. for myself, and I'm sure for you. So I just encourage you at this time to take in all those practical strategies, those emotional intelligence strategies that you can apply in your day-to-day life to live that life, that elevated experience that you deserve. I challenge you today to not to walk away the same way as how you came in. There's so much goodness here from amazing professionals. They've actually walked it in their corporate lives, Peace Corps, so many things. That is such a gift. And so I'm just gonna do a final wrap here. If I can do quickly share. 1 second. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, I guess
Yes.
that's done. Okay, yes. So to wrapping up, again, I want to thank everyone for their attention today and just for coming to such a unique and insightful session on emotional intelligence for breakthrough in life. We all want to break through. We all want to win. We all want to conquer life. So this is the place to be. And I thank you for valuing that, for valuing yourself enough to show up here today. So we have learned so many principles. We have learned about amazing benefits of EQ from Clifford Starks. We've learned about the usefulness of feedback, continuous learning. Seize those opportunities along the way, those lessons learned, for EQ build, personal growth and recovery. Dr. Susie covered that so well. Effective strategies for stress management. Thank you, Dr. Angeline. Exercising empathy for yourself and others. So important. Thank you, Jackie. And of course, thank you, Buddy, for that whole presentation on how we can leverage empathy for conflict resolution, optimal conflict resolution. And of course, wonderful Crystal, on how we can actually establish healthy boundaries for our own preservation, for our own sanity. We need to be sane to do life and to do life well with others. And of course, the priceless gems in general, they're amazing. We had so many today for our improvement of our day-to-day life experience. So I encourage you today to really reflect and take advantage not only of those giveaways, those wonderful insights, but also the emotional self-regulation techniques for resiliency and for emotional intelligence build. There's so many out there. Meditation, journaling, deep breathing, heart-paced breathing helps you to take a pause from it all. Cyclic breathing exercises. What a gift. I really want to express my heartfelt gratitude to the presenters today for eloquently presenting those topics that we desperately need for our day-to-day lives and for healing and empowerment. And of course, I encourage you today to take a look at the chat for the speaker giveaways. We have amazing speaker giveaways from these brilliant leaders. I'm sure you really don't want to pass on that. And lastly, but certainly not the least, I encourage you to explore BreakThru's special bonus offer. We have a special bonus offer of a 2-hour workshop for resiliency, because you need that to overcome in life. You need that for passion and purpose-driven comebacks so that you can live that life that you deserve. So we're giving you this golden opportunity. It's just $247 offering, discount pricing 50%. And you invest in yourself so you can go out there and conquer life, just like all these leaders who presented to you today are doing. So thank you so much. It's been an amazing experience being your host on day one of Summit. Thank you so much for Colleen, for stepping in and for helping manage things and so we can have that order today. And most importantly, thank you for the viewers and for the audience. I am so grateful. We are so grateful for each and every one of you. And we look forward to seeing you again on day 2, Summer Day 2. We have amazing lineup with another set of wonderful subject matter experts tackling topics again around EQ for BreakThru. And again, it's an honor.
Saskia,
Goodbye.
do you have that link by any chance for them to be able to click on that link? For anyone who's still here as a participant, I wanted them to be able to click on that link that you just mentioned. It's not in the list of gifts that you had available in the speakers. So I wanted them to be able to take advantage of looking into that since you offered them such an incredible offer and some of them may not be back for day 2.
Okay, let me see here. I'm putting it in the chat right now. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I would
Certainly,
hate
that's
for them to
fine.
miss out on that.
Yes, absolutely will not want to miss on that. So this is you can head there to our website at BreakThru.com and you can book yourself that wonderful 2-hour resilience workshop. We move you from struggle to freedom and have you walk and live a life of healing and empowerment you deserve. So thank you again. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time. And we wish you well in your personal life as well as your professional career. It's an honor. See you tomorrow. Goodbye.
Bye-bye, everybody.